Hello, today I'm going to be doing a review of the iFI iDSD Black Label Nano Headphone Amplifier and DAC. So that's what the front of the box and the side of the box looks like, and the back of the box. And if you can't read that on this webcam, you can always look that up online. You do get a clamshell, and inside that clamshell you get the amp and accessories. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the bag. I don't know what this material is, but it's very nice. But I never ended up using this bag, and I want to point out that the stitching has already broken, and I never even used this bag, so not very good quality. You get a white box that would have the accessories in it. They give you two rubber bands to attach the amp to your phone. They're both almost the same size, so they don't really give you a smaller size or a bigger size. They give you this USB adapter. I believe it's type A to type B. They also include a USB adapter cable, type A to type B. And then they also give you a very short USB cable. It's about 3 feet long. It's very thick, doesn't really get tangled. This would be what you plug into your computer. And then it's type A, so that this end will then plug into the back of the amp. And I do like this connection better than a USB micro, but it still wiggles, as you can see. But I would say it's more secure in there than a micro USB cable. Now, what they don't include is a USB cable to connect it to your phone. They don't include that, so you have to buy your own USB cable to connect it to your phone. They also include a thank you card and a battery charging card. And then you also get a English user manual. And you can always download that online if you need to be able to read that. Alright, and before we continue, I bought these adapters, these balanced adapters, 2.5 to 3.5 or 3.5 to 2.5 off of eBay for about $5 from China. And I would like to let you know that these adapter cables do not work. So if you have a headphone cable that's 2.5 millimeter balanced and you need an adapter cable, I would probably recommend this one instead. This one's from Venture Electronics. It's $5, but you only get one. And shipping is $3. So I also picked up 2.5 to 3.5, and then I also picked up an XLR to 2.5 balance cable, and all of these work, by the way. So those ones from China do not work, but the Venture Electronics ones do. So here's the amp. That's the top of it. Here's the bottom. Just tells you about some of the technologies. And I am going to be comparing it to the Q1 Mark II, the FIO. And this weighs, the iFi weighs about 4.9 ounces, and I believe this one's about 3.5 ounces. Now this one actually feels heavier, the FIO, because it's more compact. This one actually, even though it weighs more, it feels lighter because it's hollow. More hollow feeling. So let's start with the back. So I already showed you where you plugged in the USB cable. So this is the only input. Then you get a measure or listen filter, which, by the way, listen is a transistor optimized minimum phase, and measure is a frequency response optimized. And then you also get a few other settings if you're using DSD or DXD or MQA, which I did not use any of those. Now I do want to mention that it does support DSD, and it also has MQA, so if you have Tidal, that's an important feature that you might want. But in terms of this filter, when I switch it when playing music, I can hear almost no difference. So I don't know what it does, and I can't hear a difference. So now that we have that covered, it also has a 3.5 line out, so that output the DAC to another amp or a powered speakers. On the front, you get 3.5mm TRS or balanced TRS connection, so you can plug in an unbalanced cable or a balanced headphone cable in either the IE match port or the direct port. And then you also get a power LED, and it turns many different colors. So when you turn the amp on, it will flash green, letting you know that it's waiting for USB connection. And if you turn the amp on first and then plug it in through the USB, it will then use the battery power on this amp. And it claims that it can last up to 10 hours. I tested it. It lasts about 8 to 10 hours. And the charging time is about 4 to 5 hours. So not that long, but long enough to get you through the day. And then if you have it off and then you plug it in using USB, then you turn it on, it will then use USB power. So if you do run out of power, and let's say you connect it to your phone, you can then start drawing power from USB. But that's something to watch out for, because you don't want to draw power from your phone if you don't want it to. So then you get this volume knob which clicks on and off, and it goes all the way this far. And let's talk about the power for certain headphones for IE match or direct. For Sennheiser 660Ss or 5.8X Jubilees or the Monoprice M1060Cs or open, you need about 10 to 11 o'clock in direct mode. And in direct mode you need about 12 to 1 o'clock for T50 RPs. And then in IE match mode you need about 2 to 4 for the T50 RPs. So this has enough power for the T50 RP Mark IIIs. And then in direct mode, you only need about 1 to 2 o'clock for the Sennheiser or the Monoprice headphones. So it has enough power for the Fostech T50 RPs, which is one of the most power-hungry headphones. So now let's go ahead and talk about the difference between direct and IE match. Now direct is the full power without IE match. IE match is the same thing as direct, but they use their IE match technology. So for example, if I use this IE match adapter cable, put the headphone into here, and then plug this into direct port, it's the same volume as IE match. Now I'm probably going to have a separate review for this because I didn't do a whole lot of testing with that. But what does IE match do? You will need more power in IE match mode, but it's supposed to remove any background hiss that you might get on, let's say, IEMs. But this will help improve the dynamics. And it works on any of the headphones I have tried. So you don't need to use IEMs. It will work on headphones as well. So it helps improve dynamics, which basically means if you have an instrument that's playing really soft, and then it gets really loud, so he starts playing it a lot harder, so where it gets really loud, there's going to be more dynamic range. So it can go softer to louder, which makes all the things that you hear in music sound a lot better in IE match mode. So I have no use to use this amp in direct mode. And I kind of wish that it didn't even have direct mode now, because sometimes I might accidentally plug a cable into direct mode and then the volume will be way too loud, you know? So I recommend you use IE match mode because it sounds a lot better. Alright, so let's go ahead and compare the sound to the FiiO Q1 Mark II, which is this amp here. Now let's talk about the sound signature on both of these. This amp is going to sound more warm, and I will say it has good detail, but the highs will end up sounding more soft on this, so never fatiguing on the FiiO. And there's going to be less clarity, but it is warm and kind of relaxed sounding. While the iFi, on the other hand, you get a big increase in clarity, which also means this is a brighter sounding amp, so the highs can be fatiguing for long periods of time. Also, I want to mention that in direct mode, if you turn the amp up really loud, the highs will start to sound sibilant and harsh sounding. Now it doesn't really do that in IE match mode, it'll sound a lot better in IE match mode. But I want to mention that in long periods of time, you might get a little fatigued with how this amp sounds. Next thing, the iFi's highs have more detail than the FiiO Q1 Mark II. Now another thing I want to mention is mainly in direct mode, there's one headphone that had an S problem on the iFi. So when vocals are singing and it has those S's, s, that get really annoying, the COS K SC75s have the S problem on this amp. And I would say those headphones also have the sibilant highs when plugged into the direct port. Now if you plug into IE match port, those headphones still have the problem, but it's fixed by a bit to where it's not as much of a problem, but still there. While the other headphones will be fine in either direct or IE match mode. So let's go ahead and move on to vocals. Now the iFi is going to have more clarity, again, more detail in the vocals. The FiiO is going to sound a little more recessed in the vocals. Not so much in the single-ended, but definitely a lot more recessed when running balanced. When you run this balanced, the vocals don't get recessed. So this has better vocals, either single-ended by just a little bit to where it doesn't really matter, but in balance mode, I would definitely take the iFi over the FiiO. Now let's go into bass. The FiiO is more boomy and single-ended, but it's not as tight. It's still tight, but it's not as tight as the iFi. The iFi has better quality bass. And then once you move into balance mode, the iFi will actually not only be better quality than the FiiO, even if it's in balanced, but it will sound stronger on the iFi once you run into balance mode. Alright, so that pretty much covers the highs, the vocals, and the lows. So let's talk about it a little more. So balance. Let's start with the FiiO first. In single-ended, I really like how this amp sounds. But once you go into balanced on the FiiO Q1 Mark II, it recesses the vocals too much to my liking. I don't like how this sounds in balance because it really recesses the vocals. It definitely makes it a lot more airy sounding, spacious sounding. But the problem with that is the vocals are recessed. And there's a few other, and since this is a less clear sounding amp, more warm, you also get less clarity as well compared to the iFi. But this does have a more relaxed sound, so I really like how this does sound if you want a more relaxed sound, because it is pretty good. The iFi, on the other hand, when run balanced, doesn't recess the vocals. And it doesn't really change the sound signature all that much either. But it does improve it by another like 10%. So you get a little bit better resolution and a little more clarity. I found this, even though this doesn't sound warm in balance mode, you just get a little more clarity. So a little less warm. Which wasn't a problem, by the way. But I did find in balance mode it can be maybe a little more fatiguing if you're listening to really, really loud volume. But you get about a 10% improvement, so it gives you a little more clarity, a little more resolution, and a little bit more instrument and vocal separation. And I definitely noticed that the bass was not only tighter, but also a little more powerful once run balanced. Now, it wasn't a big enough improvement to maybe, for some people who are going to buy like a $50 balanced cable, is it a big enough improvement for like 10%? That's up to you. While the FiiO Q1, I didn't really like how it was balanced that much because of the recessed vocals. Now, so balanced versus balanced, I would rather take the iFi by a lot. Single-ended versus single-ended, well, then this one's maybe 5 to 10, 15, 20% at the most. Let's just say 10% better. So single-ended wise, if you want a more relaxed sound, then the FiiO Q1 Mark II is a good choice. And by the way, the iFi is $200, but I got a really good deal on it. And the FiiO is about $100 or $90. And if you buy it off of eBay with a 20% off site-wide coupon, then you can only pay like $75 for this. And for $75, this is a really good deal for the FiiO. Now for single-ended versus single-ended, they're both good. I would say the iFi still takes it, but for like less than half the price, the FiiO is still a good choice. Now, the other thing I want to mention is on the back of the FiiO, you do get a bass boost switch, while the iFi has no bass boost switch. So if you really don't care about that extra 10% on the FiiO, and you might want to care more about the bass boost, then that's another reason why you might want to buy this. By the way, this also does have better battery life as well. And is smaller too, because as you can see, it's about half as thick, but the lengthwise is about the same. Now the bass boost on this, I do not like it on dark or warm sounding headphones. For example, Sennheiser 598s or any of the Sennheisers, the bass boost will make those sound a little muddy. Or M1060Cs will make them sound muddy. On headphones that aren't really dark sounding or warm already, the bass boost is pretty good actually. It's very clean and good, and definitely helps a lot if you want more bass. So something like the Koss or Philips SHP 9500s, or the plain R version of Fostech T50 RPs, or the open versions of the M1060s, for example. So that's one of the major selling features of the FiiO. Now the only other thing I really want to cover would be the DAC line out. And this also has a line out, but it also has a line in. And that's the main thing I don't like about this, is you're going to have to buy a separate cable, because the only input is USB. Now the DAC is supposed to take digital and convert to the analog. But what I found is that there's a huge sound difference on both of these DAC-wise. And what I mean is that the line out on both of these is coloring the audio. In other words, when I hook this up to my Dark Voice or the Massdrop CTH, for example, it colors it in the way of how these amps sound. So if I plug this into the Massdrop CTH, it's going to sound warmer and less fatiguing sounding, for example, and less clarity. If I use the DAC on the iFi, it's going to have more clarity, a little more detail, but it's going to be a little more fatiguing sounding because maybe the highs might be a little too much. But overall, I will say I do like the DAC better on the iFi. So that's basically, I think, all I really want to cover. Do check out my review of the Q1 Mark II to learn a little bit more about it. And if I missed anything in this review, I'll probably mention it in the FiiO review. So thank you for watching.